Hello, everyone. My name is Zach Munch, and this is Team 14's leadership activity presentation. There were only two members in our group, and my team member has dropped the class, so I will be handling this presentation all by myself. So, for this leadership activity, I am aiming this exercise primarily at a business. Particularly maybe an engineering team as I am in the engineering school. So that's what I think about. So this activity would be useful for an engineering team to use or another business focused team. So one of the most important questions is why are we even doing this leadership exercise? What is the point of this exercise? What is it supposed to be making us think about? What is it supposed to be teaching us? So the idea for this exercise is that it wants to demonstrate how communication is vitally important in the completion of a group task. Without communication, you're not going to get anything done. You also want to be able to show how an instruction that is clear to one person may not be clear to another. Could be a boss giving instructions to their employees. They think that what they said is completely clear, that it makes perfect sense, but the people receiving that communication might not have the same frame of reference that the boss is coming from, so they might not know exactly what he's talking about. And then we also want to demonstrate how listening is just as important as speaking. You need to be able to listen to instructions. You need to be able to understand what a person is trying to say. So those are all really important skills that we want to work on during these exercises. So building off of what we just talked about, the skills that we want to develop in this activity is collaboration, teamwork, nonverbal communication, and also verbal communication. So these four components are all very important to working in an office, and those are the skills that we want to focus on for this activity. So for this activity, the equipment required is pretty minimal. All you really need is a rubber band, multiple if you're having multiple groups complete this activity at the same time. Group size for this activity is going to be from 2 to 3 people. So if you have a larger team, you might want duplicates of these supplies. The rubber band needs to be thick enough that if you stretch it a decent amount, it's not going to immediately snap. Then you're also going to need plastic cups, preferably standard size solo cups are perfect for this activity. You're going to need as many as how tall you want to make the stack of cups for each group. And then blindfolds, you'll need at least two for each group. As the last activity, you'll have two people blindfolded and one person giving instructions. So for this leadership activity, there are going to be 4 parts with an optional fifth component. So to start it simple, the first activity that we'll be doing is just an activity that will get everyone comfortable with the process of stacking these solo cups. In the way that you're supposed to do it for this activity. So the intended way that this activity is supposed to work is you're supposed to take a rubber band and you use it and you stretch it over the top of a solo cup, and as you stretch the rubber band, it will grab onto the sides of the cup, and then you can lift the cup up with the rubber band and then place it down and then unstretch the band to let go to build the tower. So you're not supposed to touch the cups with your hands at any point in this activity. You're supposed to use the rubber bands for moving all of the cups around. The size of your stack can be altered for the activity depending on how tall you want to make it and how difficult you want it to be. The higher the stack is, the more difficult it's going to get. I think that having a base of 4 cups and then building up 3 layers from there is probably a good starting point for most people. It's not too easy and it's not too hard. I set a time limit of 5 minutes for each of these activities. I think that especially for this first activity, 5 minutes is very generous. It's not that difficult to do this activity by yourself. But as we move along, the 5 minute time limit is going to be getting a bit tougher to meet, and that is intentional as we want people to be thinking that they're on a set time limit, sort of like how in the workplace you're on a set time limit usually for your projects. So activity two is similar to activity one. It is the same task. You're still building the Tower of Cups. However, the only difference this time is that instead of only of doing it by yourself, you will be doing it with a partner. So in this activity, each partner will have one side of the rubber band in their hand, and then they'll have to work together to stretch and unstretch the rubber band in order to move the cups around. Both participants will be allowed to speak in Activity 2, so they shouldn't really have any troubles communicating. Activity 2 is really intended to just get everyone comfortable with moving the cups around in a partner pair, as it gets a lot more difficult when you have two people doing this rather than just one. I would recommend probably using the same stack size, but if you're finding that it's taking too long, you could cut down the size if it's a lot more difficult than doing it just by yourself. Still having the time limit of 5 minutes, so that this part of the activity doesn't drag on. So activity three is very similar to activity two. It's still having two people in a team, each one of them manipulating one side of a rubber band in order to stack the solo cups. However, this time neither participant is allowed to speak to each other. So this is intended to help work on your nonverbal communication skills while working in a team. This is also the first activity where the time limit's probably going to start to get a little bit more important. It's going to start being that pressing weight that you're trying to beat in order to complete the task in the 5 minutes that you have. And then we come to activity four. This is where it's going to start to get a little bit pretty difficult here. So we're going to have three people on a team now. And then in that team, they're going to choose one person to be the leader. And then the other two participants will wear blindfolds. And then those two people will be the ones manipulating each side of the rubber band. So in this activity, the leader will verbally instruct the team on how to manipulate the rubber band to stack the cups. And then the blindfolded team members are not allowed to speak to each other or to the leader. So they'll have to work on their listening skills, and then the leader will have to work on making sure that their communication is as clear as it can possibly be. This is where the time limit is probably going to be very difficult to meet, and it will be a race to be able to see if you're going to be able to finish this task in the prescribed time limit. And then we come to the final part of our activity here. I call this an optional activity, but if you have the time budgeted for this, I would very highly recommend you complete Activity 5 as well. In Activity 5, you're going to swap the leaders and the participants in the three-person group from Activity 4 around so that everyone will have a turn being the leader and a participant. This is intended so you can kind of see how the group improves in the task once everyone has had a turn being both a leader and a participant, and as you'll kind of get to see both sides of the coin with this activity. So now that once all of the participants have completed all of the previous activities, we then can move the group into the discussion portion of the leadership exercise. So the discussion portion is really important as we want people to reflect on what they've learned so that they can then apply it in their work environment. So for the discussion portion of the exercise, we have a couple sample discussion questions that would probably be helpful to ask to get people to reflect on what they've learned. One of these is what type of instructions were the most helpful during activity 4 and 5 and what instructions were harmful. This can get people to think maybe they had one person that gave them really, really incredible, clear and concise instructions that were really helpful at getting them and a partner to complete the task 4. But then maybe they had somebody else who just gave really kind of jumbled instructions. They didn't make a lot of sense, and they actually hindered the group in completing the task. So we want people to think about what instructions are great and which ones aren't great so that when they're communicating with people in the office, they can communicate in a clear and concise manner so that everyone is understanding what is being discussed. And then we also want to ask what were the challenges in being the leader in activity in 4 and 5, and what communication skills were important for that role. So maybe not everyone in the office is a leader, but in this activity, everyone gets the experience to be the leader, and they can see how difficult that is sometimes. Maybe sometimes you're given instructions that you think are clear and concise, but your group just isn't getting it because they can't see the picture that you're being worked on. So it can kind of make people a bit more understanding, perhaps, in the office. And then we also want to ask, what were the challenges of being the participant activity 4 and 5? Being blindfolded and asked to complete a task is pretty difficult if you're not getting great instructions. So this is kind of the other side of the coin from the previous question. We want people to understand how difficult it is completing a task if you're not getting those great instructions in the first place. And then how does this activity make you reflect on office communication about team tasks? So that's the whole point of this entire leadership exercise. We want people to think about how communication is probably one of the most important things to have in order to actually complete a project. So as they will be able to see in this exercise, if they don't have good communication, and nothing's going to get finished. The leader will be able to see the problem, but if they can't communicate what the team needs to do, they're not going to be able to solve it. And then these are just some examples. These are ones I thought that were really important to make sure that you're going over, but there's plenty of other questions that could also be asked this time. So now that we've completed the activities, we've discussed it, the teams are all finished with the leadership activity. They've all gone back to work. So hope the takeaways that we wanted them to walk away from this exercise, having kind of internalized, is we want them to understand how seeing a problem clearly can lead to quick conclusions. We're going to see this in activity 1 when you're by yourself with the rubber band and you can see the cup stack. It's really easy to complete it because you know where all the cups are, you know where you need to move everything in order to complete the task. It's easy. We want people to see how in the office environment, if they can have a clear picture of the task they need to complete, it's going to be a lot simpler to finish it. We also want them to understand how not seeing a problem or not having it clearly explained can lead to poor teamwork and little progress in a task. We see this in activities 2, 3, 4, and 5, especially in 4 with the blindfold, because it's literally not being able to see the problem clearly. If a team doesn't all understand exactly what needs to be finished, there's going to be people who can't work the most efficiently on it, and we want people to understand that. We want both the leaders and team members, because we want leaders to be able to make sure that all of their team understands what needs to be finished, and we want the participants to speak up when they don't understand what's going on and that they need it explained more clearly to them. We also want people to understand how communications given by leaders can be seen as clear and concise by the leader, but then not by the team members. This is looking at activities 4 and 5. Sometimes when people are giving instructions, they can see the problem clearly. They think the instructions that they're giving are incredible. Nobody should be able to screw up the task with those instructions they've just given, but it's not how that is to the team members. When they are hearing those instructions, they can't see what's in front of. They can't see the entire problem in front of them, so that the instructions they're getting are not making much sense, and they're sometimes even hindering progress on the project. So we want the leaders of a team to understand that sometimes they're going to need to make sure that they're explaining things in a way that everyone on their team can understand. And then we also want everyone to understand how listening is very, very important in working in a team. If the people in group 4 who are blindfolded aren't listening to the leader who's giving them instructions, if they're not trusting the leader giving them instructions, they're not going to be able to finish the task. I mean, they might be able to fumble through it, but they're going to end up knocking stuff over. The task isn't going to get finished in that 5-minute time frame. Things just are not going to be able to get done. So those 4 things are the very, very important aspects of communication that we want people to take away from this activity, but there's also a lot of additional things that I didn't go over right here. And then with those takeaways, that is the complete leadership activity. That will hopefully be useful in an office environment. It's intended to get a team working better together, more closely together, help everyone understand each other's viewpoints just a little bit better, and hopefully improve team efficiency in the long run. Also, hopefully the exercise is a bit fun. I had fun with my roommates when I was taking those photos with stacking the cups. It's a bit more difficult than you think it's going to be. So hopefully it's a fun leadership exercise that people in the office don't groan at when they see on their calendars. Hopefully people would find this activity fun, as I also think that having an activity that's a bit more fun to complete helps with people actually internalizing what they learned during it, because they're enjoying the activity. They're not just like sitting through a boring lecture on it. So thank you all for listening to this presentation. Maybe someday you'll be able to use this leadership activity to help improve the working environment of an office team.